Senator Sessions, before you're seated, I'd like to administer the oath. Would you raise your hand, please, and answer this question? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you, and please be seated. Senator Sessions, it's our normal process, if you desire to introduce people that are with you, including your family, I'm sure you're very proud of. You're free to do that, and then go immediately to your opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe we've been joined by super grandchildren of mine. It's an honor for me to be here and to have my family with me. First, my wife, Mary, my best friend for 47 years. Without her love and support and sunshine, none of this would have been possible for me and our family. And we are so proud of our 3 children, each one of which are here today. Mary Abigail Reinhardt, our oldest, is married to a Navy officer, and they're now stationed in the Pacific. Thank you. They're now stationed in the Pacific Coast. They have 2 children, Jane Ritchie and Jimbo, and they wish me well this morning. My daughter, Ruth Walk, maybe Ruth, you would stand up, and her husband, John Walk. John is an attorney with the Department of Homeland Security, and they have 4 children, as you see before you today, Gracie, and Hannah, and Joanna, and Phoebe. Phoebe and Joanna are twins, and we're so proud of them. My son, Sam, is a graduate of Auburn and Alabama Law School. Sorry, Sam, about the game last night. Lindsay, congratulations, wherever he is. Sam is an attorney in Birmingham, and he's married to Angela Stratus. They have 4 children, Alexa, Sophia, Lewis, and Nicholas. 10 grandchildren. The oldest is 9, and you can imagine the week we had at the beach this summer in Alabama. Finally, I want to express how humbled I am to have received such overwhelming support and encouragement from our nation's law enforcement community. Many are here today. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I would like to ask those present, please, to stand and be recognized, the law enforcement members that are here today. Would you please stand? Every major law enforcement organization in America has endorsed my candidacy. I feel the weight of the confidence they placed in me. And gentlemen and ladies, I'll do my best to be worthy of that. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, yesterday was Law Enforcement Officer Appreciation Day. Sadly, on that day, we lost 2 of our brave officers. Orlando Police Department, Master Sergeant Deborah Clayton, one of the first officers to respond to the Orlando nightclub shooting in June, was shot and killed while confronting a subject wanted for murder. Sergeant Clayton, a 17-year veteran of the force, was married with 2 children. While assisting in the search for that assailant, Orange County Deputy First Class Sheriff Norman Lewis was killed in a traffic accident on his motorcycle. He was an 11-year veteran of the Sheriff's Office. These honorable and dedicated have dedicated their lives to keeping their community safe, and we should remember their service and keep them and our families and their families in our prayers. Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Feinstein, distinguished members of the committee, I'm honored to appear before you today. I thank you for the opportunity to respond to your questions as you discharge your duty in the appointment process as prescribed by the Constitution. I also want to thank my dear friends.
USA. No Trump. No KKK. No fascist USA. Sessions is a racist, illegitimate, just like the whole Trump fascist regime. Prevent it from ruling. People should flood into the streets. January 14th. Let me stand up. January 14th and stay in the street. Stop the Trump business people. No Trump. No KKK. No fascist
Mr. Chairman, if I might, dear friends, I want to thank Richard Shelby, my colleague, and Senator Susan Collins for the kind and generous introductions. It was very moving and touching for me. It's hard to believe, really, that the three of us have served together in this body for almost 20 years. When I arrived in the Senate in 1997, I probably wouldn't have anticipated becoming so close with a colleague from Maine, two people from the northernmost part of our country and the southernmost part of our country. It took us a while to perhaps understand our accents, but once we did, we became fast friends. Of course, Richard Shelby and I never had an accent problem. He was has been a steadfast friend, and I think we've been a pretty good team representing the interest of Alabama and the United States. I want to thank President-elect Donald Trump for the confidence and trust he has shown in me by nominating me to serve as the Attorney General of the United States. I feel the weight of an honor greater than I aspired to. If I'm confirmed, I will commit to you and to the American people to be worthy of the office and the special trust that comes with it. So I come before you today as a colleague who's worked with you for years, and some of you 20 years. You know who I am. You know what I believe in. You know that I'm a man of my word and can be trusted to do what I say I will do. You know that I revere the Constitution, that I'm committed to the rule of law, and you know that I believe in fairness, in impartiality, and equal justice under law. Over the years, you've heard me say many times that I love the Department of Justice. The office of Attorney General of the United States is not a normal political office, and anyone who holds it must have total fidelity to the laws and the Constitution of the United States. He or she must be committed to following the law. He or she must be willing to tell the president or other top officials if he or they overreach. He or she cannot be a mere rubber stamp. He or she must set the example for the employees of the department to do the right thing and ensure that when they do the right thing, they know the Attorney General will back them up, no matter what politician might call or what powerful special interest, influential contributor, or friend might try to intervene. The message must be clear. Everyone is expected to do their duty. That is the way I was expected to perform as an Assistant United States Attorney, working for Attorney General Meese and part of my career. And that is the way I trained my assistants when I became United States Attorney. And if confirmed, that is the way I will lead the Department of Justice. In my over 14 years in the Department of Justice, I tried cases personally of every kind: drug trafficking, very large international smuggling cases, many firearms cases, other violent crimes, a series of public corruption cases of quite significance, financial wrongdoing, and environmental violations. Our office supported historic civil rights cases and major civil cases. Protecting the people of this country from crime, and especially from violent crime, is a high calling of the men and women of the Department of Justice. Today, I'm afraid it's become more important than ever. Since the early 1980s, good policing and prosecutions over a period of years have been a strong force in reducing crime, making our communities safer. Drug use and murders are half what they were in 1980 when I became a United States Attorney. So I'm very concerned that the recent jump in violent crime and murder rates are not anomalies, but the beginning of a dangerous trend that could reverse those hard-won gains that have made America a safer and more prosperous place. The latest FBI statistics show that all crime increased nearly 4% from 2014 to 2015, the largest increase since 1991, with murders increasing nearly 11% the single largest increase since 1971. In 2016, there were 4,368 shooting victims in Chicago. In Baltimore, homicides reached the second highest per capita rate ever. The country is also in the throes of a heroin epidemic, with overdose deaths more than tripling between 2010 and 2014. Tripling. Nearly 50,000 people a year die from drug overdose. Meanwhile, illegal drugs flood across our southern border and into every city and town in the country, bringing violence, addiction, and misery. We must not lose perspective when discussing these statistics. We must always remember that these crimes are being committed against real people, real victims. It's important that they are kept in the forefront of our minds in these conversations and to ensure that their rights are protected. So these trends cannot continue. It is a fundamental civil right to be safe in your home and your community. If I am confirmed, we will systematically prosecute criminals who use guns in committing crimes. As United States Attorney, my office was a national leader in gun prosecutions nearly every year. We will partner with state and local law enforcement to take down these major drug trafficking cartels and dismantle criminal gangs. We will prosecute those who repeatedly violate our borders. It will be my priority to confront these crimes vigorously, effectively, and immediately. Approximately 90% of all law enforcement officers are not federal, but they're state and local. They are the ones on the front lines. They are better educated, trained, and equipped than ever before. They are the ones who we rely on to keep our neighborhoods and playgrounds and schools safe. But in the last several years, law enforcement as a whole has been unfairly maligned and blamed for the unacceptable actions of a few of their bad actors. They believe the political leadership in the country has abandoned them. They felt they have become targets. Morale has suffered, and last year, while under intense public criticism, the number of police officers killed in the line of duty increased by 10% over 2015. And firearms deaths of police officers are up 68%. So this is a wake-up call, colleagues. It cannot continue. If we're to be more effective in dealing with rising crime, we will have to rely and work with more effectively local law enforcement, asking them to lead the way. To do that, they must know they're supported, and if I am so fortunate as to be confirmed as Attorney General, they can be assured they will have my support in their lawful duties. As I discussed with many of you in our meeting prior to this hearing, the federal government has an important role to play in this area also. We must use the research and the expertise and the training that has been developed by the Department of Justice to help these agencies in developing the most effective and lawful law enforcement methods to reduce crime. We must reestablish and strengthen the partnership between federal and local officers to enhance a common and unified effort to reverse the rising crime trends. I did this as United States Attorney. I worked directly and continuously with local and state and law enforcement officials. If confirmed, this will be one of my priority objectives. There are also many things the department can do to assist the state and local officers to strengthen relationships with their own communities, where policies like community-based policing have absolutely been proven to work. I am committed to this effort and to ensuring that the Department of Justice is a unifying force for improving relations between the police in this country and the communities they serve. This is particularly important in our minority communities. Make no mistake, positive relations and great communications between the people and their police are essential for any good police department. And when police fail in their duties, they must be held accountable. I have done these things as United States Attorney. I have worked to advance these kind of policies. In recent years, our law enforcement officers have been called upon to protect our country from the rising threat of terrorism that has reached our shores. If I'm confirmed, protecting the American people from the scourge of radical Islamic terrorism will continue to be a top priority. We will work diligently to respond to threats using all lawful means to keep our country safe. Partnerships will also be vital to achieving much more effective enforcement against cyber threats, and the Department of Justice clearly has a lead role to play in that essential effort. We must honestly assess our vulnerabilities and have a clear plan for defense as well as offense when it comes to cyber security. The Department of Justice must never falter in its obligation to protect the civil rights of every American, particularly those who are most vulnerable. A special priority for me in this regard will be the aggressive enforcement of laws to ensure access to the ballot for every eligible voter without hindrance or discrimination, and to ensure the integrity of the electoral process, which has been a great heritage of the Department of Justice. Further, this government must improve its ability to protect the United States Treasury from fraud, waste, and abuse. This is a federal responsibility. We cannot afford to lose a single dollar to corruption, and you can be sure if I'm confirmed, I will make it a high priority of the Department of Justice to root out and prosecute fraud in federal programs and to recover monies lost due to fraud and false claims, as well as contracting fraud and issues of that kind. The Justice Department must remain ever faithful to the Constitution's promise that our government is one of laws and not of men. It will be my unyielding commitment to you, if confirmed, to see that the laws are enforced faithfully, effectively, and impartially. The Attorney General must hold everyone, no matter how powerful, accountable. No one is above the law, and no American will be beneath its protection. No powerful special interests will cower this department. I want to address personally the fabulous men and women that work in the Department of Justice. That includes personnel in Main Justice here in Washington, but also the much larger number that faithfully fulfill their responsibilities every day throughout the nation. As a United States Attorney, I work with them constantly. I know them and the culture of their agencies. The federal investigative agencies represent the finest collection of law enforcement officers in the world. I know their integrity and their professionalism, and I pledge to them a unity of effort that is unmatched. Together, we can and will reach the highest standards and the highest results. It would be the greatest honor for me to lead these fine public servants. To my colleagues, I appreciate the time each of you have taken to meet me one-on-one. As senators, we don't always have enough opportunity to sit down and discuss matters face-to-face. I had some great visits. I understand and respect the conviction that you bring to your duties. Even though we may not always be in agreement, you have always been understanding and respectful of my positions and I of yours. In our meetings over the past weeks, you have had the opportunity to share with me and you're relating to the department from unprosecuted crimes on tribal lands, a matter that is greater than I had understood, to the scourge of human trafficking and child exploitation, to concerns about cuts in grant programs, to the protection of American civil liberties, and the surge of heroin overdose deaths, to just name a few things. I learned a lot during those meetings, and particularly in my meeting with Senator Whitehouse, who discussed cybersecurity. He has a great deal of knowledge there, and I'm glad that Senator Whitehouse, you and Senator Graham have taken a lead on this important issue, and I think we can work together and make some progress. Senator Graham, and congratulations on your football victory last night. We'll talk about that later. Pretty thin. So I want to assure all of my colleagues that I have given your concerns earnest reflection and will bear them in mind as I move forward. I will sincerely endeavor to keep these lines of communications open and hope that we can continue our collegiality and friendships. In that regard, if I'm confirmed, I commit to all of you that the Department of Justice will be responsive, Mr. Chairman, to Congress, and will work with you on your priorities, all of you, and provide you with guidance and views where appropriate. The Department will respect your constitutional duties, your oversight role, and the particularly critically important separation of powers between the executive and legislative branches. Let me address another issue straight on. I was accused in 1986 of failing to protect the voting rights of African Americans by presenting the Perry County case, the voter fraud case, and of condemning civil rights advocates and organizations, and even harboring, amazingly, sympathies for the KKK. These are damnably false charges. The voter fraud case my office prosecuted was in response to pleas from African-American incumbent elected officials who claimed that the absentee ballot process involved a situation in which ballots cast for them were stolen, altered, and cast for their opponents. The prosecution sought to protect the integrity of the ballot, not the block voting. It was a voting rights case. As to the KKK, I invited civil rights attorneys from Washington, D.C. to help us solve a very difficult investigation into the unconscionable, horrendous death of a young African-American coming home from the 7-Eleven store at night simply because he was black, Michael Donald, and actively backed the attorneys throughout the case, and they broke that case. That effort led to a guilty plea and a life sentence in court for one defendant and his testimony against the other defender. There was no federal death penalty at the time. I felt the death penalty was appropriate in this case, and I pushed to have it tried in state court, which was done. That defendant was indeed convicted and sentenced to death, and 10 years later, ironically, as Alabama's Attorney General, my staff participated in the defense of that verdict and sentence, and a few months after I became United States Senator, that murdering Klansman was indeed executed. I abhor the Klan and what it represents and its hateful ideology. I insisted Marsh Dees of the Southern Poverty Law Center and his lawsuit that led to the successful collapse of the Klan, at least in Alabama, the seizure of their building, at least for that period of time. As Civil Rights Division attorneys have testified before the committee, I supported fully their historic cases that the Justice Department filed to advance civil rights and that I supported, including cases to desegregate schools, abolish at-large elections for cities, county commissions, and school boards. These at-large elections were mechanisms used to block African-American candidates from being able to be elected to boards and commissions. It was a deliberate and part of a systemic plan to reduce the ability of African Americans to have influence in the election and governing process. I never declared the NAACP was un-American or that a civil rights attorney was a disgrace to his race. There is nothing I am more proud of than my 14 years of service in the Department of Justice. I love and venerate that great institution. I hold dear its highest ideals. As God gives me the ability, I will work every day to be worthy of the demands of this august office. You can be absolutely sure that I understand the immense responsibility I would have. I am not naive. I know the threat that our rising crime and addiction rates pose to the health and safety of our country. I know the threat of terrorism. I deeply understand the history of civil rights in our country and the horrendous impact that relentless and systemic discrimination and the denial of voting rights has had on our African American brothers and sisters. I have witnessed it. We must continue to move forward and never back. I understand the demands for justice and fairness made by our LGBT community. I will ensure that the statutes protecting their civil rights and their safety are fully enforced. I understand the lifelong scars borne by women who are victims of assault and abuse. And if I am so fortunate to be confirmed as your Attorney General, you can know that I understand the absolute necessity that all my actions must fall within the bounds of the Constitution and the laws of the United States. While all humans must recognize the limits of their abilities, and I certainly do, I am ready for this job. We will do it right. Your input will be valued. Local law enforcement will be our partners. Many friends in federal government that I've had in law enforcement will be respected. I've always loved the law. It is the very foundation of this country. It is the exceptional foundation of America. I have an abiding commitment to pursuing and achieving justice and a record of doing that. And if confirmed, I will give all my efforts to this goal. I only ask that you do your duty as God gives you the ability to see that duty as you are charged by the Constitution. Thank you for your courtesies. I look forward to the further hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Before I ask questions, I want to thank you, Senator Sessions, for your service in the Senate, but more importantly, for taking on this responsibility you've been nominated for, and to thank you for your opening statement. I'm glad that you were able to mention the names of a lot of your family that are with you, and there's a lot of other people that we may not have their name, and I would ask the staff to put in the record the names of all the other people who are accompanying you today as well, if they're willing to give us that name.